Be me, 47-year-old enlightened feminist who has spent decades fighting the patriarchy. Divorced my ex-husband Derek 5 years ago because he was just another typical man who didn't understand my needs, didn't appreciate how much emotional labor I was doing, didn't validate my feelings enough, spent too much time at his job instead of supporting my personal growth journey. Honestly, the divorce was the best thing I ever did for myself. It took me years of therapy to realize I deserved better. My therapist Sandra says I'm a survivor, and that leaving Derek was an act of radical self-love. Filed for divorce when our son Jake was 12. Knew it would be hard on him, but children are resilient, and he needed to see his mother modeling healthy boundaries. The divorce settlement was fair, even though Derek tried to claim it wasn't. Got the house obviously because I needed stability. Got primary custody of Jake because mothers are naturally better caregivers, and that's just biology. Derek got him every other weekend, which was generous considering how emotionally unavailable he always was. Got spousal support because I had sacrificed my career to raise Jake. Okay, I worked part-time at a non-profit, but that's not the point. The point is, I gave up opportunities to be a mother. Derek never appreciated that sacrifice. Never understood that my work at the Feminist Collective was just as important as his engineering job. Actually more important because I was changing the world while he was just making money. Anyway, fast forward to now. Jake is 17 and suddenly he's becoming impossible. Ever since he turned 16, he's been different. More distant. More critical. Questioning everything I say. I blame Derek honestly. Derek has obviously been poisoning him against me during those weekend visits. Probably filling his head with misogynistic ideas about how I'm difficult or unreasonable. Last month, Jake started talking about where he wants to go to college. I've been planning this for years. He's going to go to Oberlin, or maybe Smith if they're accepting male students now. Somewhere progressive where he can unlearn all the toxic masculinity that society has programmed into him. Somewhere that will teach him about intersectionality and dismantling oppressive systems. But no, Jake says he wants to go to Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech. Some engineering school where Derek went. I tried to explain to him that engineering is a field that actively excludes women and perpetuates the gender pay gap. That by going into engineering, he would be participating in systemic oppression. He just rolled his eyes at me. Actually, rolled his eyes. Said he likes math and building things and wants to study mechanical engineering. I told him that's just the patriarchy talking. That he's been conditioned to value traditionally masculine pursuits over more meaningful work. He said, "Mom, I just like engineering." As if it's that simple. As if our choices exist in a vacuum separate from societal conditioning. I tried to have a serious conversation with him about this. Explained that he could do so much more good in the world studying sociology or gender studies. That he could be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. He said he didn't want to study those things. Said they seemed like made-up problems. I was absolutely shocked. This is my son. The boy I raised to be a feminist ally. The boy I took to women's marches in his stroller. The boy I read bell hooks to at bedtime. Now he's saying feminism is about made-up problems. Derek's influence is so obvious, it makes me sick. Then last week, something happened that made everything so much worse. Jake came home and said he needed to talk to me. Sat me down at the kitchen table, all serious. Said he'd been thinking a lot about his living situation. My heart dropped because I knew what was coming. He said when he turns 18 next month, he wants to move in with his dad full-time until he goes to college. Just like that. Casual as anything. Like he wasn't ripping my heart out. I asked him why, and he gave me this whole list. Said Dad's place is closer to his school. Said Dad doesn't criticize his interests. Said he feels like he can breathe there. That last one really hurt. He can't breathe around me, his mother who gave birth to him, who sacrificed everything for him. I tried to stay calm, asked him what he meant by that. He said living with me feels like walking on eggshells. That everything becomes a political discussion. That I analyze and criticize every choice he makes. That I make him feel guilty for just existing as a male person. I was stunned. Absolutely stunned. I told him that I've only ever tried to educate him, to help him become aware of his privilege, to teach him to be better than other men. He said that's exactly what he's talking about. That I treat his gender like it's a character flaw he needs to constantly atone for. That Dad treats him like a person. I said of course Derek treats him like a person. Derek doesn't understand intersectionality. Derek doesn't see the systems of oppression at play. Derek just wants to be the fun dad who doesn't challenge Jake to grow. Jake said maybe he doesn't want to be challenged every single day. Maybe he just wants to be a teenager without every conversation becoming about dismantling the patriarchy. I told him that's a privilege he has as a man. The privilege to just opt out of thinking about these things. Women don't get that privilege. I have to think about oppression every day. He said, "That sounds exhausting, Mom, and I didn't choose it." Didn't choose it, as if we choose the systems we're born into. I tried to explain that awareness is a responsibility, that once you see oppression, you can't unsee it. That I'm trying to give him the tools to make the world better. He said he doesn't want those tools if they make him as angry as they make me. Angry. He thinks I'm angry. I'm not angry. I'm righteously indignant about injustice. There's a difference. I told him he's being incredibly selfish, that he's choosing the easy path, that his father lets him be complacent, that I'm the one who actually cares about who he becomes. He said Dad cares about who he is right now, that Dad doesn't have a blueprint for the person he's supposed to turn into, that Dad likes him as he is. I said that's because Derek has low standards. Derek isn't thinking about Jake's impact on the world. Derek just wants Jake to be happy and comfortable. Happiness and comfort are how we got into this mess. People prioritizing their own comfort over justice. Jake looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before. Disappointment maybe, or pity. He said, "Mom, when's the last time you were happy?" I told him happiness is a patriarchal construct designed to keep women docile, that I'd rather be aware and uncomfortable than blissfully ignorant. He said, "Okay, but Dad seems pretty happy and aware at the same time." I told him Derek is happy because he benefits from patriarchy. Of course he's happy. The system is rigged in his favor. Jake was quiet for a minute, then he said the worst thing. He said, "I don't think I've ever seen you enjoy anything. Everything is problematic, everything is oppressive, everything is something to fight against." Dad watches movies without analyzing the gender politics. Dad goes to restaurants without calculating the wage gap. Dad just lives his life. I was so hurt. I've dedicated my entire life to making the world better, to raising consciousness, to fighting systems of oppression, and my own son sees it as me not being able to enjoy anything. I told him that's exactly what the patriarchy wants us to just consume and enjoy and not question anything, wants us to be complacent. Derek is complacent, and he's teaching Jake to be complacent too. Jake stood up from the table, said he'd already talked to Dad, and Dad said he could move in whenever he was ready, that he was going to start moving his stuff this weekend. I asked him if he'd even considered my feelings, if he cared at all about how this would affect me. He said, "That's the thing, Mum. You've spent my whole life telling me to consider everyone else's feelings. To be aware of women's experiences, to check my privilege, to think about impact over intent. But you never seem to consider my feelings. You never ask what I want or what makes me happy. You just tell me what I should want and should think." I told him I'm his mother, it's my job to guide him. He said, "Dad guides me too, he just doesn't make me feel bad about myself while doing it." Then he went to his room. I sat at that table for an hour just processing. How did I raise such an ungrateful child? I gave him everything. I taught him about consent and emotional intelligence. I made sure he understood toxic masculinity and how to be different. I never let him play with toy guns or violent video games. I encouraged him to cry and express his emotions. I did everything right. And he's choosing Derek. Derek who didn't do any of the emotional labor. Derek who just showed up every other weekend and got to be the fun parent. Derek who never had to have the hard conversations. The next few days were awful. Jake barely spoke to me. When he did, it was just logistics about moving his stuff. I tried one more time to talk to him, told him I felt like he was choosing his father's comfort over my truth, that I'd always been honest with him, even when it was hard, that Derek just tells him what he wants to hear. Jake said Derek tells him he's proud of him, that Derek supports his choices even when they're different from what Derek would choose, that Derek trusts him to figure things out. I said I trust him too, I just want to make sure he figures things out correctly. Jake actually laughed, said, "That's not trust, Mom, that's control." Control. I'm not controlling, I'm guiding. There's a difference. I'm trying to prevent him from making mistakes, trying to keep him from becoming another problematic man. But apparently that makes me controlling. I asked him if his father had told him that. He said no. He came to that conclusion himself. Said therapy had helped him see it. Therapy. I didn't even know he was in therapy. Turns out Derek had been taking him to a therapist for the past 6 months, without even telling me. I was livid. I have primary custody. I should have been informed. Should have been able to vet the therapist. Make sure they weren't some Jordan Peterson follower filling Jake's head with men's rights nonsense. Jake said Dad asked if he wanted to tell me, and he said no. Said he needed a space where I couldn't analyze and interpret everything. I told him therapy is supposed to be about healing and growth. He said, "Exactly, and I'm growing into someone who sets boundaries." Boundaries. My son is setting boundaries with me, like I'm some kind of toxic person he needs to protect himself from. I asked him what his therapist says about this decision to move. He said his therapist thinks it's healthy for him to make choices about his own living situation, that it's age appropriate for him to have more autonomy. Of course the therapist would say that. Probably some centrist who thinks both parents are equal, doesn't understand the emotional labor mothers do. I tried to explain to Jake that his father and I are not equivalent parents, that I've done the hard work of actually raising him, that Derek just coasts on the infrastructure I built. Jake said he remembers me saying Derek was a good father back when we were married. I said I was wrong. I was still unpacking my internalized misogyny back then. Didn't understand yet how Derek's passive presence was actually a form of absence. Jake asked if I ever take responsibility for anything, if everything is always someone else's fault. Derek's fault, the patriarchy's fault, society's fault. I told him that's not fair. I take responsibility for my choices. I chose to leave Derek when I realized he wasn't meeting my needs. I chose to raise Jake with feminist values. I chose to prioritize awareness over comfort. He said, "You chose a lot of things for both of us without asking what I wanted. And now, I'm choosing something for myself." I started crying, told him he was being cruel, that he knows how much the divorce hurt me, that Derek got to just move on while I had to rebuild my entire life. Jake said Dad was sad too. That Dad still seems sad sometimes. That Dad didn't want the divorce. I said of course he didn't. He was benefiting from our dynamic. He had a wife doing all the emotional labor while he focused on his career. Jake said Dad still asks about me, still speaks respectfully about me, even though I apparently don't do the same. I said I'm just being honest about our dynamic. Honesty isn't disrespect. Jake said, "You've told me Dad is emotionally unavailable, intellectually lazy, and complicit in patriarchy. You've said he's part of the problem. You've said he lacks consciousness. If that's not disrespect, I don't know what is." I told him, "Those are observations based on Derek's behavior. They're not insults, they're facts." Jake shook his head. Said Dad never says anything bad about you. Even when I complain about you to him, he always says you're a good mom who loves me. He says you're intelligent and passionate. He says your heart is in the right place even when your approach is intense. I felt something twist in my chest. Derek defends me. After everything I've said about him, after calling him out for his privilege and complicity, he still speaks well of me. I didn't know what to say to that. Jake kept going. Said he used to repeat the things I said about Dad. Called him emotionally unavailable. Said he didn't get it. But Dad never got defensive. Never talked bad about me in response. Just listened and said people see things differently. Said both his parents love him, and that's what matters. Jake said that made him start to question my narrative. Made him wonder if maybe I wasn't being entirely fair. I told him Derek's playing the long game, being the good guy, so Jake would eventually choose him. Jake said, or maybe Dad is just actually a good guy. I felt like I'd been slapped, my own son defending his father against me, taking his side, believing Derek's performance over my truth. I asked Jake if he'd considered that Derek is manipulating him, that this whole nice guy act is designed to alienate him from me. Jake looked tired, said, "Mom, not everything is a manipulation. Not every interaction is a power play. Sometimes people are just being themselves." I said that's naive. All interactions involve power dynamics. Derek refusing to engage with my criticisms is itself a power move. Silence and passivity can be weapons too. Jake said, "Okay, Mom, I'm going to bed." Just like that. Conversation over. He's done engaging. Just like his father. The weekend came and Derek showed up to help Jake move. I stayed in my room, couldn't watch them pack up his childhood, couldn't see Derek acting all helpful and supportive, winning. I heard them talking and laughing. Heard Derek say something and Jake laugh. When did Jake stop laughing like that around me? When did every conversation become so heavy? After they left, I went into Jake's room. Half empty now. Posters still on the walls but clothes gone from the closet. I sat on his bed and cried. How did it come to this? I did everything I was supposed to do, raised him to be conscious and aware. Taught him about feminism and justice. Showed him a different way to be a man. And he's choosing the easy path. Choosing the father who doesn't challenge him. Choosing comfort over growth. I called my friend Michelle. She's also a single mom, also a feminist. Told her what happened. She said Jake is probably just going through a phase. That teenage boys often reject their mothers, that he'll come back around when he's older. I wanted to believe her, but part of me knows this isn't a phase. This is Jake choosing. Choosing Derek's path over mine. Choosing to be like the men I've spent my life fighting against. Or maybe not fighting against. Maybe fighting for awareness in. I don't know anymore. Michelle suggested I reach out to Jake. Try to rebuild the relationship on his terms. I said I shouldn't have to bend to his terms. I'm his mother. I set the terms. Michelle got quiet. Then she said, maybe that's the problem. I asked what she meant. She said maybe Jake needs to feel like the relationship is mutual, not just me teaching and him learning. I said that's literally what parenting is. She said he's almost 18, almost an adult. Maybe it's time to transition to a different dynamic. I told her I'd think about it, but I knew I wouldn't, because she's wrong. My job as a mother doesn't end just because Jake turns 18. My job is to guide him toward being a good person, toward fighting injustice, toward using his privilege for good. If I stop now, he'll just become another Derek, another man coasting through life on easy mode, another person perpetuating the system. It's been 2 weeks now since Jake moved out. He texts me occasionally, short messages. Doing good. School is fine. Yeah, I'll be there for Thanksgiving. I try to engage, ask him deeper questions about what he's learning, whether he's thought more about college choices, whether he's considered the impact of his decisions. He gives short answers, doesn't engage. I know Derek isn't forcing him to be distant. This is Jake's choice. He's choosing minimal contact with me, while he's probably having long conversations with Derek about engineering and whatever else they bond over. I saw Derek yesterday at Jake's school event, some awards ceremony. Jake won an award for his robotics project. I got there early, sat in the third row. Derek came in and sat in the back. Didn't even try to sit near me. After the ceremony, Jake went to Derek first, hugged him, showed him the trophy. Derek looked so proud. They talked for a while. Then Jake came over to me, showed me the trophy. I congratulated him, told him I hoped he understood that while individual achievement is nice, we also need to think about collective liberation. That trophies and awards are very much part of capitalist patriarchal systems that value competition over collaboration. Jake's face fell. He said, "Thanks, Mom," in this flat voice, then went back to Derek. I wanted to scream. Can't I just be proud of him? Yes, but also he needs to understand the systems at play. That's what Derek doesn't do. Doesn't challenge Jake to think deeper. Just lets him enjoy things, uncritically. I watched them leave together, Derek's hand on Jake's shoulder, both of them smiling, and I stood there alone in the parking lot, wondering how I became the villain in my own son's story. I'm not the villain, I'm the one who sees clearly. I'm the one who's trying to make him better. Derek is just letting him be comfortable. Comfortable in his privilege. Comfortable in his choices. Comfortable in a world that's deeply unjust. But Jake chose comfortable. Chose easy. Chose his father. And I'm left here having fought the good fight. Having tried to raise him right. Having sacrificed my own comfort for his consciousness. And for what? So he could move out the second he's old enough. So he could choose the parent who doesn't challenge him. So he could become another man who opts out of the hard work of awareness. My therapist Sandra says I need to let go. Says I can't control Jake's choices. Says I need to focus on my own healing. But how can I heal when my own son is choosing patriarchy? Choosing his father's complacency over my awareness? Choosing to be part of the problem? I raised him better than this. I know I did. But Derek got him in the end. Not by fighting. Not by engaging. But by just being there. Being easy. Being comfortable. Being the path of least resistance. And now, Jake is gone. Choosing to live with a man who doesn't see systems. Doesn't question structures. Doesn't fight for justice. Just exists. Just is happy. Just accepts the world as it is. And apparently that's enough for Jake. More than enough. Better than everything I offered. I'm sitting here in this house I fought for in the divorce. In this space I created for consciousness and growth. And it's empty. Jake's room is empty. His laughter is gone. His presence is gone. He chose his father. Chose the man who let me do all the work and then got the reward. Derek wins. Not by being better, but by being easier. And I'm left here. Aware, conscious, fighting, and completely alone.